Okay, this is the overview for lesson 4, hurricanes. I've finished with my iReady diagnostic, which really helps us determine the placement of all students, what their reading level is, what their ability is. And so I was able to go back again and kind of streamline things. You'll notice that the formatting of my lesson has changed a little bit. Begun to include the bell ringer on the main page of the assignment. It's not a separate lesson. Um, the homework itself is on one page. There's a small portion for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We will review the homework on Friday. I don't know that we're going to have quizzes on the homework. I have a large number of students who are not completing it, and I don't think that it's fair to grade the students for something they're not doing in class, although the work that they're taking home as homework is just review of the concepts we're learning in class. I'll just have to revisit that. I grade based on standards mastery. So if students haven't mastered something yet, I don't put the grade in until most of the students are passing. All right. So lesson 4, a little reminder, we've got this. Our bell ringer, again, this is that scrambled sentence that was for my Cambridge students, I just gave them the words, no punctuation. For my general education students, I underlined the first word of the sentence to help give them a start. But a lot of them still struggled with this concept of unscrambling a sentence, even if it was only like 5 or 6 words long. But we did go over the answer, which was hurricanes or storms that form in warm water, and I gave them a little preview of how I would approach this lesson, but meaning that hurricanes is the subject of the sentence, and I put the subject first. Then I ask myself, what are hurricanes? So I know that hurricanes are storms. And where do storms form? In warm water. And all of that is information that they have that we've gone over multiple times. So this shouldn't have been a struggle for them, but sometimes new concepts aren't. And we just go over till we finish it. Next, we go over our objective, and I've been having students read the objective. I want them to take a little more ownership for what we're doing in class. So I can explain why hurricanes are significant events for people, communities, and the environment. I can use text evidence to support my ideas in a scholarly discussion. We then went over the words like significant. What does significant mean? That it's important, and important things are things that have an impact on you that could be for the rest of your life. So the hurricanes are significant events for people, even if they were not directly impacted by that event. The people around them could have been. They affect communities, and they affect the environment. We are having scholarly discussions where we are reading information, and then we're talking about that information. And when we have a discussion, we use phrases like, I agree with Mary because, or I disagree with Billy because, and then they have to explain why using the information that they learned in the text. This is what we're doing, right? So today we will have a scholarly discussion about the impact of Hurricane Andrew. We've discussed Hurricane Andrew multiple times. We've seen pictures of the aftermath of Hurricane Andrew. We've watched videos of survivors of Hurricane Andrew, and we've read about it multiple times. So we're going to learn how to draw conclusions based on the information we read. So we also draw conclusions based on our previous knowledge. So we're going to take in new information today, and then we're going to couple that with information that we've already learned, and even information that we had from personal experiences, and make inferences about what we're learning. So I want students to know why we're doing this. Why do we need to be able to do these skills. So we need to be able to verbalize or express out loud what we learned from the text using the language from the text. I want them to get used to using the vocabulary that they read in their books. So it will greatly increase their vocabulary as they're always learning new words. We need to get our answers from information directly stated and make inferences based on what it says in the text and our prior knowledge. For example, and I know this is one that I've used multiple times, but it's very familiar to the students, is that we've learned recently that hurricanes are formed over warm water. Anyone who's been in the Gulf of Mexico or been in the water in Lake Charles knows that the water is warm, right? So we also know that Lake Charles gets a lot of hurricanes. So we know that if hurricanes form over warm water and if our water is warm, that's probably why we're getting a lot of hurricanes, right? So we're taking all of that information and coming to conclusions, making inferences, and showing off our skills. In the actual lesson, these move around. So it could have looked like this, right? And I'm sure you get the gist of it. And I did leave a couple of the concepts together. So what I had them do is I had them walk up to the board and they could drag this with their fingers, and it was them and a shoulder partner, and they could use the class to help them come up with the answer, and then they had to put the punctuation at the end. So they did this. This one, it was the one I did as an example. They did this one, and then they did this one also. Again, these are just those more difficult concepts that the students are struggling with. So we are doing them together, and I am modeling it for them, and I am having them discuss and help each other in class. Here are the directions for Ripple. I've talked about Ripple several times. There are actually 5 steps to Ripple. The first one is I read the question, and then I model my thinking process. Then I give them time to think to themselves. They don't have to write. They don't have to do anything. They can just think about and process the information that they've received. Then they write down their answer. What do they think the answer to the question is? How would they answer it? Then, in a safe space with just one person, they talk to their shoulder partner or their learning team, which is a max of 3 people, and they talk about what they think the answer is. And I give them a second to maybe revise their answer if the other 2 people have something completely different, or maybe the other 2 people are wrong. So they get the opportunity to discuss it and maybe change their answer if they need to. Then I call on several students to share their answer with the class, and I give the students the opportunity to say that whether or not they agreed with that student and why. I really try hard to create a safe space for my students where they feel safe sharing their answers and even potentially getting them wrong, because people don't like to share information if they think they're going to be made fun of. So here was our first question. I left the steps for Ripple on the board. How did Hurricane Andrew affect the people of Florida? We talked about that one. The next one was, how did Hurricane Andrew affect the communities? Now this one was for my Cambridge class only, and I did this for time. My general education students are doing the same thing. It just takes them a little longer to go over the concepts, so they answered 2 questions instead of 3. This was another question for all of my students. And here is, did you know? So we're talking about changing up our sentences when we write, because there are 4 main types of sentences. We have statements, questions, exclamations, and commands. And in our writing, we want to change up our sentence type a little bit so that our writing is a little more interesting. But in order to do that, we have to be at sentence types. So we did this together. I asked the question, I left the options on the board. We decided that this was a statement. We used our context clues and we decided that this was an exclamation because there is an exclamation mark here, and that's a strong, sudden feeling. This one right here obviously is a question. It has a question mark. This one right here is it is a statement, and this one right here is also a statement. This one is a command: evacuate from a hurricane immediately. So they're telling somebody to do something. This is a question. And then this was the exit ticket. They had they had four sentences on their paper, and they had to read the sentence and then write statement if it was a statement, question if it was a question, exclamation if it was an exclamation, or command if it was a command. And then they turned their papers in. This streamlined process ran the entire class period, and the exit ticket actually had to be completed in the next class, I think for one of the classes. But I think that's just because our conversation was a little more in depth. But the students are doing much better with going through the information and staying on task. Again, this is an overview. If you have any questions, please send me an email.